Take a look around you. Almost everything you own, the phone in your pocket, the coffee in your mug, the gas in your car, it probably crossed an ocean to get to you. It's a system we just take for granted. But our whole globalized world, it's all resting on a surprisingly fragile network of shipping routes. And right now, one of those key routes is under some serious pressure.
Right now, economies are basically shuddering because of what's happening in the Strait of Hormuz. A single conflict in this tiny strip of water can literally put a cork in the bottle for a fifth of the entire world's energy supply. The impact is instant, and it's everywhere.
The thing is, this crisis in Hormuz, it's a huge wake-up call. And it forces us to ask a much, much bigger question. What if this isn't just a one-off thing? What if it's a symptom of a much deeper problem baked into the way our world is set up? Well, that vulnerability has a name: maritime choke points. Think of them less like lines on a map and more like the essential and incredibly narrow arteries of our global economy. And as we're about to see, they are way more fragile than you might think.
What's really fascinating is that this idea is not new at all. Over 100 years ago, this brilliant British admiral, Sir Jackie Fisher, he pointed out that just a handful of waterways could, in his words, lock up the world. He was talking about places like Singapore and Gibraltar. The specific locations might shift a little, but the basic strategic truth? It hasn't changed one bit.
So here's the modern version of that reality. Each one of these dots is a vital choke point. The axis on the bottom shows how much global trade squeezes through it, and the one on the side shows the insane detour ships would have to take if it got blocked. And here's the kicker. As critical as Hormuz is, it's not even the most disruptive potential bottleneck on this chart. Not by a long shot.
Okay, let's really put this in perspective. You've probably heard of the Strait of Malacca, right? It's one of the busiest shipping lanes on the entire planet. If it closed, yeah, it'd be a major headache, but the detour is kind of minor, all things considered. Now, compare that to the Strait of Gibraltar. If that were to shut down, we're talking a 10,000-kilometer detour. The economic shockwaves would be absolutely astronomical.
And then you have the choke points that are just terrifying. The ones where a detour is flat out impossible. If you're a ship in the Black Sea, the Baltic Sea, or the Persian Gulf, these straits, the Turkish, the Danish, and Hormuz, they're your only way out. There is no plan B. You block them, and you've basically created a trap.
This fight is as old as civilization. Seriously. Back in ancient Greece, Sparta beat Athens not by winning some big battle, but by grabbing the Dardanelles Strait and cutting off their food supply. Fast forward to World War I, the Allies suffered a catastrophic defeat at Gallipoli trying to grab that exact same channel. The technology gets more advanced, but the geography and the strategy, it stays the same.
So, okay, if these weak spots are ancient, why is everybody freaking out right now? Well, it's because these old problems are being cranked up to 11 by a whole new set of modern threats. And these new threats really fall into three big buckets. First, you've got the rise of what's called asymmetric warfare. Second, there's the huge risk of regional fights spilling over into the seas. And third, the totally unpredictable chaos being caused by climate change.
Let's start with that first one, asymmetric warfare. You just don't need a massive navy to cause global chaos anymore. Look at what we saw with the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea. A regional group, using relatively cheap drones and missiles, managed to pretty much shut down a vital artery. Trade through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait got sliced in half, dropping from 9% of world trade to just 4%, and forcing all those ships on that long, expensive trip around Africa.
The second threat is this idea of geopolitical spillover. Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it choked off grain and oil shipments in the Black Sea. The conflict in the Middle East has paralyzed the Gulf. And the nightmare scenario that keeps economists up at night? A conflict over Taiwan. That could trigger the kind of all-out attacks on shipping that we haven't seen since the World Wars.
And finally, there's climate change. And let's be clear, this isn't some problem for our grandkids. It's happening right now. Severe droughts are literally causing traffic jams at the Panama Canal because the water levels are too low. And at the same time, melting ice up in the Arctic is opening up brand new sea lanes, which means we're getting entirely new choke points, like the Bering Strait, for countries to start fighting over.
So all this rising instability, it's setting off alarm bells for the world's great powers. And this isn't just about reacting to crises anymore. Oh no. This is about a high-stakes global chess match to control the entire board.
For decades now, China has been keenly aware of its own major vulnerability. They even have a name for it, the Malacca Dilemma. As their former president put it, China is deeply worried that a major power, and let's be real, he meant the United States, could one day just blockade the Strait of Malacca. With 80% of its oil passing through there, that could cripple their economy overnight.
So China's response to this dilemma has been nothing short of massive, and it's basically a two-pronged strategy. First, they built a blue water navy that is now, if you're just counting ships, bigger than America's. And second, they're creating land-based ways around the problem. We're talking pipelines through Asia and their famous Belt and Road Initiative, which is basically a global network of ports and infrastructure designed to bypass these maritime choke points altogether.
This all puts the United States in a really fascinating and kinda awkward position. Historically, the American Navy was like the world's ocean cop, protecting what one old strategist called a wide common for everybody to use. But that general agreement is starting to crack, and it's being challenged by an America First viewpoint that's asking, why are we paying to police the whole world's oceans?
And this quote from Donald Trump about the Strait of Hormuz, it just perfectly captures that potential new reality. The idea that America might just decide a choke point is somebody else's problem? Well, that sends a real chill through allied capitals who have relied on the U.S. security umbrella for decades.
So where does all this leave us? Well, we're sailing into a totally new and really uncertain era for global trade, one that's going to be defined by competition, by friction, and by fragility.
And here's the great big paradox in all of this. The solutions that countries are chasing, building bigger navies, fighting for control of ports, creating rival alliances, those very things are actually making the world more dangerous. The race to secure the choke points is itself becoming a major source of global instability.
And let's not forget the stakes. Despite everything, 85% of the world's exports by volume are still carried on ships. Our reliance on these sea lanes is total. When they're threatened, every single one of us feels the pain.
Which leaves us with a final and pretty critical question. For more than a century, the world has kind of run on this core principle of freedom of navigation. But in this new age of great power competition, climate chaos, and constant conflict, is that principle still a given? Or was it just a luxury from a calmer time? That is the uncertain future we're all going to have to navigate.